Today, we remember our friend and beloved Fox News commentator, Charles Krauthammer. He passed away at 68 years old yesterday after a long fight with cancer.
That's right. He loved baseball. And this morning, we're not only looking back at his passion for writing, but his fierce love of the game, especially his unwavering loyalty to the Washington Nationals. Players and fans honoring his legacy with a moment of silence at the park last night. The team tweeted this quote: "One of baseball's greatest fans, Charles Krauthammer, passed away today after a long battle with cancer. He was loved and admired by many and will be truly missed here at Nationals Park," where he had a space that when he would go, that's exactly where he would park his chair and watch his team that he loved so much.
Oh, yeah, right after Special Report. I mean, you almost think they came back and moved to Washington for Charles Krauthammer. And it's so amazing, heartening for me to think one of the deepest thinkers, one of the smartest people in the country, could still say baseball matters, right. Sports Loved matters, whether you're in contention or not. He wanted to be part of it. And the first time I interviewed him was for a special probably in 1998. And I saw that he had the back page of Time magazine. And I said, can we try to book this guy's Charles Krauthammer? He wrote an unbelievable story about this home run race with Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa. So we booked him, and he was on satellite. I did not know the extent of his intellect and his background and obviously what he would become.
Yeah, he loved baseball, went to a game with Brett Baer for one of the specials. We saw that in the video earlier. And he grew up playing baseball with his older brother. He was very close to his older brother. And, you know, a lot of older brothers don't want their little brothers hanging out with them. But his big brother always took him around. So he said he always had older friends, older brothers, and they would play baseball, and it was his favorite sport.
Well, he was a genius. And so when he would come on the program, our program, always a little intimidating, but nonetheless, he was always a good sport and good humor, and he always answered all our questions in a very Charles Krauthammer way. Watch. Charles Krauthammer, get his book. It's fantastic. I read it twice.
I write in the book, one of the reasons why I shifted is because on foreign policy, the Democrats changed, I didn't. They don't want targeted solutions. They want to take stuff over. Congratulations on your book.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Challenging me right up there.
I am not challenging you.
If you're a columnist, you get graded on the curve. But selling books, they keep score. You get numbers every day.
You love it.
It's like a basketball game. You know, I'm in the corner, the clock is running down, and I go for the three-point shot.
Charles Krauthammer, thanks so much. We went right to all your areas of expertise.
Yeah.
Rarely been done before.
Except baseball.
Right. And by the way, Charles Krauthammer, I asked him afterwards, I said, Charles, it's unbelievable how well your book's doing. I go, I guess you're tired of promoting it. And he said, no. He goes, it's the first time since my accident that I can keep score. And that's why I'm looking to win. He's looking to win every day. And what was it, 40 weeks on the bestseller list?
40 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. It's extremely difficult to get on that list. He was number one for 10 weeks in a row.
We all went to one of his book parties. There was one hosted by the channel here in this building, and I took my wife. And I said, Charles, I'd like to introduce you to Kathy. And he goes, come on over here. I want to meet the mother of the great Peter Doocy.
Oh, he's so nice.
You know, goes right there.
Yeah, talk about someone's children, and then yeah, that was really sweet of him. You're right, though, he was intimidating because he was so smart, and you thought when you talk to someone that brilliant, you're wondering, are they thinking I am so stupid, and am I asking the right questions? And I remember walking up to him and asking him if I could take a picture with him. We meet the presidents, we meet celebrities all the time, but asking him to take a picture was a little intimidating. He was so sweet, and he took the picture right there. Kimberly and I were at that event with Steve and his wife, and we're just so proud of him. He was so bright, and just to be in his presence was such an honor.
I got so many text messages and emails from people who are my friends, who are watching, who miss him.
I know. Yeah, it's because all these issues that are happening, like immigration, what was happening at the border, what the president's going to do, what the Democrats' reaction.
We need him, don't we?
Yeah, you think to yourself, what would Charles say? And the thing is, Charles Hurt was on earlier, and I thought how smart he always was to answer before Charles Krauthammer, because he would always put the period on things. You don't want to be the person that finishes up. It's like, what he said.
Don't follow kids or animals.
Right. Or Charles.
You watch people on TV for different reasons. Some it's personality, but with him, it was just to hear how we wanted to hear what he was going to say because it was going to resonate, and it was always going to be pretty spot on.
Right. We're going to continue to remember the life and times of Charles, and we've got that great report that Bret Baier has been working on for the last couple of years, actually, encapsulating his life, and we're going to play that for you in about 25 minutes.
That's right. Dana Perino was on earlier, and she said, watch for his son. His son is so bright, and just spit an image of him. Yeah. So we're remembering his wife and his son this morning.
All right. Meanwhile, in other news,
an immigration showdown in our nation's capital. The House postponing that critical vote on immigration on the compromise yesterday.
Yeah, because they don't have the votes yet. Meanwhile, the First Lady made a surprise visit to that detention center for migrant children down in Texas.
And Griff Jenkins has been braving the weather and trying to get to the bottom of all this, what reality is and where the rhetoric is. Hey, Griff.
Good morning, guys. The First Lady braved that raging storm yesterday and flooding to come to this shelter behind me where children are kept in classrooms in beds, not in cages, while they care for them and try and figure out what to do with them. She was accompanied by the HHS secretary. She met with the children and the staff here. Here's what the First Lady had to say after her visit.
We all know they're here without their families. And I want to thank you for your hard work, your compassion, and your kindness you're giving them in this difficult time.
Her second stop was canceled. She was going to visit Border Patrol, but as she departed, she was wearing a jacket that the media has made much of. It said on the back, "I really don't care, do you?" Well, after this visit, we were able to go inside this shelter and see an American flag that children made for the First Lady and speak with Dr. Kurt Sinski, who's the CEO here at this shelter. Here's what he had to say about the visit.
Yes, she wanted to learn all about New Hope Emergency Shelter, but more important, she wanted to spend time with the children. You could just see the joy on the children's faces. You could see the joy on Mrs. Trump's face, and it was very obvious to me that some real connections were made.
The visit comes as the Pentagon announces some 20,000 unaccompanied children will be housed at military bases in Texas and Arkansas. It's similar to a move that President Obama did in 2014 when he housed 7,000 children. And you know, I asked Dr. Sinski while I was in there about how different administrations have tried to tackle this crisis. Here's what he had to say.
Every administration is trying to do the best that they can in a truly difficult situation where sometimes there are no easy answers and sometimes even no good answers.
And then, of course, the situation back in Washington, the GOP leadership punting on that vote on Friday because they don't have the votes. They're going to have to try and work their differences out, and maybe we'll get a vote early next week. We'll have to find out, guys.
Once they whip enough members into line. That's right. Griff, thank you very much. You know, when you saw some of those images from inside one of the detention centers that we've seen a lot over the last week where the children, some of the children were housed, you know, it looks like a cage. Apparently, one of these, the compromise bill would end family separation. Also, there would be $23.4 billion for border security, and then there would be a 6-year special status for the Dreamers. Now, here's the thing. If a future Congress decides, you know what, we've been allocating the $25 billion over time, let's stop doing that, then the special status for the Dreamers stops.
Yeah, great idea. And those are the type of triggers that people want. They also they want special additions for agricultural workers. That's what Jeff Denham wanted, a Republican who really pushed for this vote. If it gets through the House, then it's going to be a struggle in the Senate. I get that. I would think that Steve Scalise, with all his skill and his and the respect he has, along with the president working the phones, they'll get a vote if it's a good bill. The other thing I think is the biggest joke that we're not addressing. It wasn't President Trump's idea to have everyone leave from Central and South America in June and well up at the border. Somebody has to deal with this issue. It doesn't matter who the president is. If you don't like his policy, he's also open to your policy rather than just criticizing his. He's trying to send a message to the other countries. This is not the way you do it because this is a country that has rules and laws. The port of entry would be one thing. We can boast of those laws, but we just can't let everybody in that wants to be here. And these are not, like it or not, these aren't our kids. Show them compassion. But it's not like he's doing this to the people of Idaho or Texas. These are people from another country, and now people are saying that they're more important than people in our country who are paying taxes, who have needs as well.
Yeah. Well, he just wants to make sure we vet who's coming across the border in case it's MS-13 or
Did you see the story about the 6-year-old that was found in the middle of the desert? Whoever was escorting him to our border left them, and our Border Patrol went over to Mexico and grabbed the 6-year-old?
Well, in many cases, they might be safer. If we know where they are, we're able to place them with the right families or put them back together with their moms or their dads.
There are so many problems with the immigration system in our country right now. By the grace of God, something will happen in Congress, one way or the other, and they will address them and we'll fix them. Otherwise, we'll just be right back where we started from, unfortunately, which is not good. All right, it is about 7:11 here in New York City, and Jillian joins us on this Friday.
That's right. Good Friday morning to you guys, to you at home as well. Let's get you caught up on some of the headlines we're following on this Friday. Lasers becoming a growing threat for our military. Planes flying over the South China Sea have been hit by the beams more than 20 times in the past few months. The flashes appear to come from Chinese fishing boats and can temporarily blind pilots. But so far, there have not been any reports of injuries. It comes as Defense Secretary James Mattis prepares to visit China for the first time next week. President Trump's chief economic advisor will return to work next week. Larry Kudlow has been recovering after suffering a heart attack earlier this month. The White House had said he's expected to make a full recovery. Today, President Trump will be joined at the White House by angel families to discuss the border crisis. At his rally in Minnesota this week, the president promised to stand up for families who have lost loved ones to illegal immigrants.
Mr. President, I will always fight to protect American families. I will always fight for an immigration system that defends our borders and takes care of our sovereignty as a nation.
The president has stood with angel families in the past, inviting the parents of MS-13 gang victims to the State of the Union address. And big news about Roseanne.
You can't live in the past, Dan. When things are gone, they're gone forever.
Well, apparently not so much. ABC is launching a spin-off of the show without Roseanne. Original cast members will all be a part of a series called The Conners. The Roseanne reboot was canceled last month after a racist tweet from the star. Roseanne issued a statement saying in part that she wished the best for everyone involved. That's an interesting move.
I just don't know if you can replace her. I mean, how do you replace the star of a show?
Great question. Big question.
Yeah, we'll see. Time will tell.
Well, she wanted to make sure that all the people who worked on the crew and the actors, you know, they weren't impacted
Remained at work, exactly.
All right. Meanwhile, straight ahead on this Friday.
Today, we're remembering our friend Charles Krauthammer, his life, his legacy with the people who knew him best. A.B. Stoddard joins us to share her memories coming up next.
I thought, once I'm in Washington, isn't that where they do politics? I ended up supporting just about every element of the Reagan foreign policy.
Today, we remember Charles Krauthammer, a legendary conservative commentator who garnered respect from both sides of the aisle, actually, and touched the lives of so many people. Joining me now to reflect on his life and his legacy is associate editor and columnist at Real Clear Politics and host of No Labels Radio on Sirius XM, A.B. Stoddard. A.B., great to see you. I'm so sorry for your loss. I know you were really good friends with him. We would watch you together on Special Report, and you told our producers, I have wept over the moments we all shared with him, the things I remember him telling me, of the many I can't recall, and the fact that there won't be any more of them. What are your thoughts this morning?
Well, Ainsley, thank you for having me. I am feeling incredibly sad, as I have for 2 weeks since we got the letter that Charles sent to the public saying that he had a final battle that he wouldn't win with this cancer that had not been there a month before, but that had returned. But I really relish the opportunity to talk about him because there won't be anyone else like him. And every one of us who was around him and had the privilege of being friends with him feels so incredibly blessed to have known him. He was not only as wise and as brilliant as everyone has talked about and people know from his great works, but he was inherently decent. and joyful and warm, and he really loved people. So he was just an infectious person to be around. He really, he was the person, the magnet in the room. Everyone wanted to hear what he was saying. They wanted to keep him talking, and he was so willing to engage with anyone in conversation about anything from dogs to space travel to baseball to politics to medicine. And he just really was so much more than just the work, the great work that will carry on, which is why I really hope everyone will watch tonight at 9 when Fox is running a documentary on him, and then also, you know, to buy his book if you don't have it. And I just encourage people to spread Charles around and keep him with us, because his legacy is that important.
Yeah, you're right about his intellect. He carried us through the elections. We all wanted to hear what he was going to say and would stand silenced because we wanted to hear his opinions. Any special memories or moments that really stand out?
Well, Charles was very funny. So you've heard a lot of us who are on the panel with him every week talk about how he would sort of bust us up laughing at the commercials. He was very droll and very a good deadpan. So you didn't expect it at all. But he also he was really besotted with fatherhood, and that is what really stood out the most in our friendship, because we spoke so much. He always asked about my 3 children, and he spoke so lovingly and sort of in reverence of his experience of being Daniel's father. Daniel looks exactly like his dad. They were very close. And what Charles did, in spite of his diving accident at 22, confining him to a wheelchair for life, was live a full life and live a full life as a father as he could, to provide the closest bond that he could from a wheelchair. And the things that he and Daniel shared, a love of books, of movies, of sports, and the tales that he told me about that really will always stay with me as my most cherished memory.
A.B., thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
He was in the United States as a refugee, but he was really trying to help ISIS. The scary story coming up. Plus, look who Janice found in the Keurig corner. That is Lynyrd Skynyrd. They're gearing up to perform for us live on our All-American concert series.
Hope you're having a good morning so far. It's time for your news by the numbers. First, $3 billion. That's how much the EU imposed in retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods. It targets things like jeans, Harley-Davidson motorcycles, and bourbon. The EU says they had no other choice after President Trump imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum. Next, 1,000. That's how many new words were just added to the Oxford Dictionary. New additions include spoiler alert, binge watching, and microaggression. Interesting choices. And finally, 36 years. That's how long Elvis's private jet has been sitting on a runway in New Mexico. It was sold last year for $430,000, but the owner returned it, and now it's back up for auction. Ainsley?
Thank you so much. This Southern rock band is behind Free Bird, the most requested live song in history.
I just wish it was longer. Lynyrd Skynyrd's Last of the Street Survivors farewell tour is happening this year, and most importantly, they're here to rock our plaza this morning. Gary, first off, what does it mean for you that we're actually wrapping up this band for now?
Well, we're just not going to tour anymore. We've been touring so long that this is our farewell tour, but we'll be around. We're going to do a CD and play here and there, but I've got bad health. My heart's bad. So.
You look great.
He
does, don't he?
I'm faking it.
Good.
But we're not going to tour long anymore. Anyway.
There you go. Regarding Free Bird being the most requested song in history, how many times would you say you've done that?
Oh, God, I don't know.
Give us a number.
You know what? Whenever I first started with Skynyrd in '87, I didn't sing it because I always felt like my brother was the only one that could sing it. And then we were out in Sacramento, and Gary came off after Alabama, and Gary said, man, you got to go out and sing Free Bird tonight. I said, no way. He goes, Ronnie was a writer and a singer. He'd want you to do it, and I've been doing it ever since. So,
Ricky, how did you come together as a band?
Oh, my goodness. Jacksonville, Florida. Gary, Ronnie, and Alan started the band probably around '67.
Named after your gym teacher?
His gym teacher.
Your gym teacher.
His hair was too long.
Yeah.
kept kicking us out for having long hair, but it wasn't that long then. Just touching your eyebrows, and we finally named the band after him.
Johnny, the band's decision to get back together, 10 years, was it 10 years right after the crash?
Yeah.
Can you bring us through that moment that made that decision possible?
Well, Gary called me, and we actually met in Jacksonville, and all the surviving members of Skinner was there. And when they asked me to be a part of it, it kind of freaked me out because I was a Skinner fan too, folks. You know, I grew up around the music, and you know, but after we went into rehearsal, I knew it was the right thing to do. It's been 31 years this year, so unbelievable.
And also, I look at country music today. Yeah, it's a great move. Country music today, they get pushed back on so-called new country. Right. When you guys came out with Southern rock, was there pushback from traditional country musicians?
I don't know, man. We learned from the Beatles and the British invasion, you know, and that's
Wait a minute, what do you mean you learned from the Beatles? You would be at home watching their little movies and TV shows?
We saw them on Ed Sullivan, and that did it, just like for a million other garage bands. So
you know what? But Skinner had always had country in it. You know what? We grew up on country music, and then discovered the Beatles. And
what's the key to longevity of this band?
Great songs. My brother was a poet for common people, and you know what? Those songs still stand the test of time.
Yeah. Yep. Sweet Home Alabama is the favorite in the South, especially. What's the story
everywhere,
behind that?
Girl. What are you talking about?
I grew up in the South, and
we're in New York City. Y'all like Sweet Home Alabama?
It's one of those songs when it comes on in the bar or it comes on, you know, at the party. Everyone in the room is singing it at the top of their lungs. What's the story behind that song?
Well, we were just traveling in Alabama a lot and recording. In Muscle Shoals, and we love the you know, the towns and all the countryside we drove through. And Ronnie kind of did a joke about Neil Young. He was one of our favorite artists, but he was from Canada talking about the South, so he told him we didn't need him around. And there was some political stuff in there way back then about Wallace, but of course we said boo, 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 and a few other things, but we just love the state, so we wrote about it.
That's great. And by the way, so this tour, Marshall Tucker, Jason Aldean, and who else is going to be on the Kid Rock?
God, we got Kid Rock. We've had Bad Company, you know, out with us. Jamie Johnson. We're just bringing in a bunch of people.
But you don't have to wait for that. You can actually see them live. They're going to take the stage. They're going to be performing. Leonard Skinner, guys, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Can she travel with you?
Yes, fangirl. Right, the house is postponing. We do love you, Janice. The House is postponing a crucial vote on a solution for immigration, but do we really need more people in this country? What do y'all think of that? That's what Michael Anton wants to know. He's the former national security spokesman, and he's going to join us live.
And Mick Mulvaney just used a cheese pizza to explain government waste. I think it involves a lot of dough.
Right.
Right back.
Your daddy is rich, mama. You're over two. I ain't the one, baby.
We are back. We're remembering our dear friend Charles Krauthammer.
The beloved Fox News commentator passing away after losing his longtime fight with cancer. He was 68 years old.
Bret Baier, who hosted a special report and had Charles Krauthammer on his panel many, many times, shares this report on the life of Charles Krauthammer.
It's my job to call a folly a folly.
Charles Krauthammer, columnist, author, and Fox News commentator, lived his life telling others exactly what he thought.
You're betraying your whole life if you don't say what you think, and you don't say it honestly and bluntly.
It was that quality that brought Charles to Fox News Channel during Brit Hume's tenure as anchor.
This is not a man designed for television. You look at him and say, this is not a potential TV star. In fact, he became a huge star, even I would almost say a megastar on this channel. And it was the sheer force of his intellect and the power of his thinking. And on top of that, there was a gentleness about him personally that if he disagreed with you, you never felt attacked. He just disagreed with you.
It was always unspoken on the panel that he was always the leader because of his delivery, his intellect.
Special Report stage manager Mary Pat Dennard was on set with Charles every night for years.
It was kind of an ongoing joke on the panel that Bret Baier has a signal when people need to wrap up. I give him 30, so Bret puts his arm out. And Charles was on the show forever, and we always laughed that I don't think he paid attention to that once. He had something to say, he was going to say it. No time constraints were going to control him on that.
Born in 1950s New York to Jewish parents who left World War II era Europe, Charles' father raised his son to value the pursuit of knowledge.
His motto for us was, I want you to know everything. I want you to learn everything. You don't have to do everything, but you got to know everything. He thought that was part of life.
The family lived in Montreal and summered at their cottage in Long Beach, New York.
It was a paradisiacal childhood. My brother and I were inseparable. He always insisted I be included, so I got used to being around the big boys and taking the slings and arrows, and that's how you get toughened up.
As a senior at McGill University in Canada, Krauthammer became captivated by political journalism. He applied to medical school to appease his family and was accepted to Harvard. But Krauthammer put off attending and enrolled at Oxford instead. It was there that he met fellow student from Australia, Robin Trethewey, who would later become his wife. Charles reversed course and headed back to the U.S. to attend Harvard.
Why did you choose psychiatry?
I was looking for something halfway between the reality of medicine and the elegance, if you like, of philosophy. So psychiatry was the obvious thing.
It was there that one unexpected moment, a tragic diving accident, changed Charles' life forever.
It just hit at precisely the angle where all the force was transmitted to one spot, and that is the cervical vertebra, which severed the spinal cord.
When did you realize that the accident was life-altering?
The second it happened.
Despite his permanent paralysis, Charles astounded his professors and classmates by graduating on time, near the top of his class. Ultimately, he decided the field wasn't for him, a career reversal he joked about on Fox decades later.
I'm a psychiatrist in remission, doing very well. I haven't had a relapse in 25 years.
In 1978, Krauthammer headed to Washington, D.C. for a government job.
I thought, once I'm in Washington, isn't that where they do politics? One thing will lead to another.
Robin encouraged him to follow his dreams, and he soon landed at the left-leaning New Republic magazine, just as the Reagan administration took office.
So help me God.
Krauthammer found himself agreeing with the new president and questioning his own feelings about the Democratic Party.
I ended up supporting just about every element of the Reagan foreign policy.
Months after Reagan's re-election, Krauthammer penned the phrase, "the Reagan Doctrine," in a provocative Time magazine column, and the name stuck.
He created the Reagan Doctrine. Nobody had heard of it. Charles put together a piece and dubbed it, and you know, I've read it many times, and it just holds up so well. I think Charles discovered then that there really was a lot to Reagan.
But it would take years before Charles fully embraced domestic conservative ideals.
It took me about a decade. I was skeptical of tax cuts. I was skeptical of smaller government at the beginning. And then by the end of the 80s, I had begun to change.
In 1985, his son Daniel was born. And 2 years later, Charles won the biggest honor in journalism, the Pulitzer Prize. But it was the events of September 11, 2001 that brought a more forceful tone to his commentary and a regular spot on the Special Report panel. Over the years, Charles became an audience favorite.
The biggest error that we make is to lose the damn war because we refuse to recognize who the enemy is and what it requires. For God's sake, why do you have to talk about that? The mourning is over, the Shiva is done, and if you're a conservative, you should be optimistic. I think it'll snow in hell before the DOJ is going to go after her. We all were expecting it. It didn't happen. That was the dog that didn't bark.
Despite all of his accomplishments, awards, and high-profile endorsements, Krauthammer was always humble and at times uneasy with the influence his words held.
No, I think about it, and I find it worrisome. The reason is that when I was totally unknown, I could say anything I damn well pleased.
That included when his opinions reached presidents.
Read Charles Krauthammer's column in the Post today. He's a brilliant man.
Well, you know, when you get praise from President Clinton, and you're from my side of the aisle, that means that my career's done. I mean, I'm toast.
Krauthammer's high standards for political leaders were bipartisan for President Obama.
Well, I think he's done just about everything wrong.
To then candidate Donald Trump.
This is the strongest field of Republican candidates in 35 years. You could pick a dozen of them at random and have the strongest cabinet America's had in our lifetime. And instead, all our time is spent discussing this rodeo clown. I don't think I've ever heard such a stream of disconnected ideas since I quit psychiatry 30 years ago.
As far as Charles Krauthammer, I'm not a fan of his. I think he's a highly overrated pundit. He's wrong on so many things.
Charles Krauthammer, who, by the way, in Canada Casino put his first money on.
I saw that. I couldn't believe it.
Did you see that?
Thank you, Charles. I'm going to make you look good, Charles.
In recent years, as a Republican administration took office, Charles didn't shy away from his trademark, blunt, unabashedly critical analysis when it came to President Trump.
Presidents don't talk like this. They never have. This is what it sounds like when you're living in a banana republic.
Charles had other loves aside from politics. He played chess and was an avid baseball fan.
I grew up playing the game. I love to play the game.
And loved nothing more than seeing his Washington Nationals play and win.
Know the glory. You know, and with the White House on fire, the Congress in chaos, and the world going to hell in a handbasket, we need happy news like this. This is why God created baseball late on the 6th day.
Friends at Fox News Channel remember that quick wit and Charles' love for talking to anyone.
Special Report has a lot of people that come in and watch it, and they were always in awe of Charles and always very, apprehensive about approaching him. And I would always say, please go say something to him. He would love to talk to you, and he was always so friendly to everyone.
In 2013, Krauthammer released a book, Things That Matter, and summed up the survivor's spirit that has guided much of his life, writing, quote, "The catastrophe that awaits everyone from a single false move, wrong turn, fatal encounter. Every life has such a moment. What distinguishes us is whether and how we ever come back."
There's an element of that in everybody's story, their low point. Do you want it enough, and are you lucky enough? That's a part of it, too.
In mid-June, Krauthammer announced that he'd been diagnosed with cancer, and doctors had given him just weeks to live, writing, "I leave this life with no regrets. It was a wonderful life, full and complete, with the great loves and great endeavors that make it worth living. I am sad to leave, but I leave with the knowledge that I lived the life that I intended."
Do you think you'll ever stop writing?
No, I intend to die at my desk.
Really?
I would like to. I'm not sure I can arrange it.
Charles Krauthammer was 68 years old.
You know, Charles Krauthammer's loss to America, the national conversation, is dwarfed, of course, by the loss to his family and his friends. And of course, this morning, our thoughts and prayers are with his son, Daniel, and his wife, Robin.
Absolutely. God bless you all. We can learn more about Charles Krauthammer, his life, tonight on Special Report.
And also, there's going to be a special at 9 o'clock. Meanwhile,
the House is postponing a crucial vote on a solution for immigration. Former National Security spokesperson Michael Anton has a new op-ed about this issue that's causing a stir. He's going to join us live next.
Plus, Geraldo Rivera is going to be here. Judge Jeanine is going to be here. Harvey Levin starts his brand new series, brand new season on his brand new series. First guest, Magic Johnson, but first he's going to be with us right before we're done and before we go to the concert.
Good Friday morning to you. We're back with some headlines. A refugee living in the U.S. is found guilty of trying to help terrorists. Jamshid Mutarov planned to join the Islamic Jihad Union and told his daughter to pray he would die a martyr. That group is known for opposing the government of Uzbekistan, where he's originally from. He was arrested at a Chicago airport in 2012 trying to go to Turkey. Pizza is not just for dinner anymore. The Office of Management and Budget Director using it to explain government waste.
If you make a cheese pizza, it's governed by the Food and Drug Administration. If you put a pepperoni on it, that's governed by the USDA.
And by the way, that was incredibly sad. I think you should put that on television.
What about the other toppings? The cabinet was discussing waste and overlap and possible government reorganization. Let's look your headlines. Send it downstairs to you, Brian.
Yeah, the president loved that. But here we go with this #1 issue on his desk today, the immigration. The showdown on Capitol Hill as the House postpones a crucial vote on the immigration compromise. But our next guest has a new debate to talk about. In a new Washington Post op-ed creating quite a stir, he asked, why do we need more people in this country anyway? Here to answer that is the president's former national security spokesperson himself, research fellow at Hillsdale, Michael Anton. Michael, are you saying we have enough people? We're out of room? What do you mean?
I'm saying that that's the fundamental question that ought to drive the debate, but we're not really having a debate. We're having a kind of argument where one side says, if you're good, you just want more immigrants, and if you don't, then you're bad and you're evil, and let's shut down all discussion. We need to have a discussion about what's best for the country, what's best for American citizens. As President Trump said on the campaign trail and has repeated ever since, and he's totally right, if we don't have a border, we don't have a country. If we as the people who elect our representatives don't get to decide what's best for our country, who can come here, who can't come here, then we don't have a country. That's the question that ought to be asked, and we don't get to ask it.
So you're saying right now the labor market in particular, with you're saying that what is best for our workers, what is best for our country. The labor market in particular, some say, yeah, we need day workers. We need more people in the workforce. What do you say?
Well, I think certain aspects of the business community are always going to say that, because the higher the supply of labor, the less in wages they have to pay. But one of the reasons President Trump got elected is we had a 20-year or even longer track record, depending on what studies you look at, of working class wages, middle class wages stagnating or falling behind. So right now, thanks to the Trump economy, we have a very low unemployment rate, under 4% for the first time in decades. I say, why don't we use that low unemployment rate to tighten the labor market and raise wages for people who have not been getting ahead in years? They deserve a raise. They deserve a boost. These people that have been falling behind deserve a boost, and increasing the supply of labor is only going to keep wages low. That benefits big business, but it doesn't benefit workers.
Right. And Michael, the $330 million you say is enough. For people who say, well, you have to show a heart. What do you say?
I say the United States has a huge heart. Look, the country is less than 250 years old. We've welcomed millions and millions of people over the course of that time, including my own ancestors. Yeah. The United States has been the most generous country with regard to immigration throughout its history, in the history of the world. But we've got to have limits, or we don't have a country.
Michael, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Coming up straight ahead, we change gears. Actress Cynthia Nixon is running for governor of New York, and she's making it clear where she stands on immigration.
I think we need to abolish ICE. That seems really clear. They have strayed so far from the interests of the American people and the interests of humanity that we need to abolish it.
Wait until you hear what else she says about President Trump. And it's Take Your Dog to Work Day. I am the one that listened. Rocky and Apollo are here for the first time since they were puppies. What has their life been like? They'll tell the true story exclusively on Fox and Friends. The last time we saw Rocky and Apollo was Take Your Dogs to Work Day, and they were just puppies. We did not know how big they would get.
Fast forward to today, and they got big.
Rocky and Apollo have agreed to appear on Fox and Friends after 2.5 years of negotiation. Jillian, bring them out.
Come on.
These are the Great Pyrenees that have rocked my neighborhood.
Right, these are no longer puppies, they're ponies.
And Rocky's coming around this end.
Right, and these are Great Pyrenees brothers.
Over here.
And they are, I don't know if the entire breed's like this, but they're the friendliest, kindest dogs.
Really? Do you know what today, okay, so today is Take Your Dog to Work Day. It was invented back in 1999 by Pet Sitters International to encourage businesses to allow employees to bring their dogs to work one day a year, and today is the day.
Although dogs don't usually get up at 3 in the morning, so they were. I had to literally wake them up like they were out last night drinking.
How do you put them in a car? Do you have a big Suburban?
I just grab their back legs and they jump in. And
a wheelbarrow.
Yeah, I mean, these dogs, if you want to see some of the dogs as they grown through life, we knew they'd be big. I didn't think they'd be this big. So they just didn't stop growing.
Why did you decide on the Great Pyrenees?
Well, we just came out, and Steve knows what this is like especially. We just came out of losing a Burmese mountain dog, extremely friendly dog. We don't want to get the same one to replace it, so we want to get something like it. So, yeah, the girls in particular, Kirsten, Caitlin, and Brian, went to work. work, and they found this breed, found a great breeder in Virginia.
They are so cute.
And they said, well, since Rocky's deaf, I know you want, since Apollo's deaf, we didn't name him at the time, would you take his brother? We were getting Rocky already. And we said, yeah, why not? And we forget that he's deaf, that Apollo's deaf, because he comes, he have different hand signals, they hang out. We were told after a year the brothers would fight. It's 2.5 years. They're still buddies.
They love each other.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do, Brian, later with on Take Your Dog to Work Day? You're going to take him like over to the ice skating rink at Rec Center?
Steve, what I'm going to do is send him back in the Ducey limo. They're going back because I got to do radio after this, and we have an hour and
I will pay money. I want you to walk out there on 6th Avenue with them and just see people's reaction.
Please do.
They're beautiful dogs.
But see, this is their attitude, and this is still technically the puppy face.
Do they shed?
That's a puppy face.
Do they leave this all over your sofa?
It's like a blanket.
The cottontail.
They do, and the thing is, they try to pretend that they're not on the couches when we go to bed, but it kind of gives it away in the morning when there's like a blanket sitting there.
What are their personalities?
Extremely kind, even like children. They do not attack other dogs.
They're lovable dogs.
They're great.
You need a fleet of Roombas at your house.
Absolutely.
That's right.
All right.
All right, they're beautiful.
So take your dog to work day if your boss
I did. Now they get to go home.
Well, coming up, the Supreme Court ruling that you will have to pay more taxes when you shop online. Varney is going to tell us what this means for your shopping future in the next hour.